Imagine that you are standing on a single dirt block. All around you stretches nothing but endless void. You don't have any items in your inventory. On top of that, everything is happening in survival mode in regular Minecraft. Are you able to progress in any way or even just survive in such a world? Can you treat this as a regular skyblock, just a bit more challenging? In a normal skyblock, you spawn on a small floating island with a tree and a single chest containing useful items. Thanks to them, you can basically do everything you would in regular Minecraft. They are considered a fundamental element of the skyblock game. Apart from the main island, there are often additional islands scattered around the map, which usually represent different biomes. This allows the player, upon reaching them, to progress literally in any direction. And what if I told you now that all of this comes down to just a single block of dirt? Let me warn you right away, this is an extremely complicated process and I really don't recommend it to anyone. Alright, so we're on this single block and the question is, what now? We definitely can't interact with it in any way, so the only thing we can rely on is mob spawning. In Minecraft, monsters are divided into three main groups. Passive mobs, which spawn only during the day, aggressive ones that appear at night, and the so-called biome-exclusive mobs, meaning those that spawn only in a specific biome. Of course, when you're stuck on a single block of dirt, well, you don't have a choice of many biomes. In general, for monsters to spawn in Minecraft, both our surroundings and we ourselves have to meet a few conditions. First of all, mobs cannot appear within 24 blocks of the player. For us, this means we have to jump into the void if we want something to spawn up top. This applies to both passive and aggressive mobs, although not everything is as simple as it might seem. For passive type monsters to appear at all, they need a grass block where the light level is 9 or higher, In our case, this is not going to be a problem for us at all, so the game's algorithm will automatically and immediately attempt to spawn them every 20 seconds. That is why, if we jump into the void at just the right moment, after we respawn, we should see a newly spawned passive mob. Unfortunately, most of them will be completely useless to us. However, from a sheep, we could get a block of wool, which would then be useful for expanding our base, so all we need to do is kill the sheep. Yes, I forgot to mention that this is impossible. It turns out, unfortunately, that we can't hit the sheep in a way that doesn't knock it into the void. So we have to move on to aggressive mobs. At first glance, it seems like there aren't too many problems with them because they can spawn on any block when it's dark and their spawn time is also faster. Their spawn rate is significantly faster than that of passive mobs. But there's one big problem. Aggressive monsters in Minecraft disappear immediately after spawning if the player is more than 128 blocks away from them. The thing is, when we fall into the void for the game to spawn an aggressive mob, at some point we reach minus 200 blocks, which means that the monster that just spawned disappears immediately. Fortunately, there is one way to solve this. We have to fall into the void in such a way that we die before passing minus 192 blocks. You've probably noticed that the damage the void deals to us is simply too low. There's no way to increase it. That's why the only option is to simply lose hearts before we fall into the abyss. How can we do that? There are two ways. Either get struck by lightning during a thunderstorm or lose all your hunger, which leads to gradually taking damage. The first option is rather out of the question, because it would simply take us too much time. That's why we have to use the second method, which, by the way, is a bit annoying, because we have to lose all our hunger without falling off a single block. We can only do this by jumping in place, which we have to repeat for 20 minutes. When we manage to do this, and at the same time our health drops below 2 hearts, we can jump into the void where we'll die at minus 128 blocks, because that's roughly when we'll take our first damage from starvation. After respawning at the top, there should be a hostile mob waiting for us. As you've probably already noticed, above all, we need to be lucky so that we don't get a creeper, but something more useful. However, we still have the same problem to solve. How do you kill a monster without knocking it off the single block? Here, the Minecraft sun comes to our aid, because mobs start to burn in it. However, for this to be possible, we have to wait for daybreak. Only then can we respawn at the top. But we have to be absolutely and incredibly cautious. We can't let the mob strike us down into the void, because as I mentioned earlier, that would cause it to vanish into thin air forever. The task isn't easy, but it is definitely doable. And finally, we have our first items obtained on a single block: dirt. Of course, bows and arrows are the most beneficial for us. Thanks to them, we can one-shot some passive mobs. However, you have to be careful that throughout the whole process of respawning more monsters, you remember to throw all your items onto the single block of dirt each time. Zombies can also reward us with very useful items: an iron ingot or a shovel. Thanks to the first one, we were able to craft shears, which we can then use to shear a sheep, obtaining one valuable block of wool. But I warn you, be careful not to let the sheep eat your grass, because then your whole adventure is simply over. Without a grass block, there's absolutely no way to progress any further. The second useful item is the shovel. Thanks to it, when it starts snowing in our world, we can collect snowballs, which we can then use to craft a snow block. This is generally a breakthrough moment in our development, because by using both wool and snow blocks, we have the means to significantly expand our territory. This gives us, above all, the ability to spawn more and faster mobs. Additionally, we can easily kill them and get items from them. Now, I will present to you all the basic knowledge without which neither I nor you would be able to start this adventure on a single block of dirt. As you might have guessed, I took on this challenge and set myself the goal of obtaining all diamond tools in this episode. This is possible, although it requires many complicated techniques and a deep understanding of the mechanics of Minecraft, which I will try to show you. I also want to point out here that, for reasons you'll find out about a bit later, I'll be playing on a slightly modified version of Minecraft, in which both the mob spawn rates and the chances of certain item drops are slightly increased. Thanks to the knowledge I shared with you, I was able to reach this point, picking up along the way a bow with arrows, a few blocks, some wool, and an iron shovel, which was meant to help me collect snowballs. However, there was a problem here, because I was currently on a plains biome, where snow simply couldn't fall. For this reason, when creating the world, I specifically had to change a few settings, so that in the end everything would generate on 2 biomes. If I hadn't done this, any progress in the gameplay would have been completely impossible. Interestingly, this isn't because I wouldn't be able to obtain snow blocks, but for a completely different reason, which you'll find out about in a moment. At that time, the most important thing was to get as much building material as possible, so I created a path from a few blocks, thanks to which I could get to another one, Snowy Taiga biome. Then, when the snow started falling, I waited until it covered the wool block and finally scooped it up with a shovel, getting snowballs in the process. Let's go 16 blocks of snow. Now we are finally able to expand our territory. Because of this, we'll be able to kill monsters without any problem at all. Nevertheless, simply gathering building materials and mob drops won't help us progress further. But before I tell you what will allow us to make huge progress, I want to let you know that for every subscriber this video gets, I'll have to survive 1 extra minute on a single block of bedrock, which, believe me, is not easy at all. But let's get back to this video. To make a huge leap in our gameplay, we need to go back to a certain type of monsters. I'm talking about so-called biome exclusives, meaning mobs that spawn only in specific biomes. Without them, we wouldn't be able to move forward. Why? Because right now, the most important thing is to get an emerald so that we can trade with villagers later. There's only one way to do this. It turns out that in the game, from a certain mob that's considered completely useless, you can actually get an emerald. We're talking here about the fox, which spawns among other places in the Snowy Taiga. Unfortunately, this is where huge problems arise. It turns out that when you kill a fox, you don't actually get any emerald. You only get it if the fox spawns with it in its mouth. The chance that a fox will be holding anything in its mouth is 20%. When it comes to an emerald, that drops to just 1%. Additionally, the fox is one of many mobs that can spawn only in a specific biome, so we have to multiply everything by another 2/15, which ultimately means there's a 1 in 750,000 chance that a fox will actually spawn with an emerald in its mouth. After a few more calculations, we come to the conclusion that, on average, we have to wait for something like this, 125 hours. I don't want to make you feel even worse about this, but unfortunately, we also have to take into account the fact that there's only 1 grass block in our world, which makes the whole situation much worse. After the final calculations and numerous simulations conducted by Jokey Pokey, we get an average of 212 hours of waiting for it to spawn, a fox with an emerald in its mouth. I hope you can already guess why I'm playing on a slightly modified version of Minecraft. However, even with that, I still had to wait quite a long time. I almost fell asleep in front of the computer. Seriously, I'm telling you. Hey man, why are you sleeping? Wake up because I need to kill you somehow. Alright, first hit. Damn, he really flew far. Oh, you know what? Forget it. We'll just solve this in a simpler way. And we've got the emerald. Do you think it's going to be easy from here? Well, it's not. In fact, this is just the beginning of some really terrible torment. If you don't believe me, watch until the end. Alright, we've only got 1 emerald, so the question is what now? There's only one option. We wait until the wandering trader offers any kind of tree sapling for sale. Yes, you heard that right. This is the moment when we'll finally be able to get wood. But as usual, not everything is that simple. First of all, just like with the little fox, we have to spend quite a lot of time just to get the wandering trader to even spawn. Additionally, you have to keep in mind that not every trader sells a tree sapling. Plus, they cost 5 emeralds, which means we have to repeat the whole process with the fox another 4 times. And finally, we make the most important transaction of our lives. We have a sapling on a single block of dirt. Now you probably think that all you have to do is plant the sapling on the dirt block and you're set. Well, not quite. If we do that and the tree grows, we'll lose it, the only dirt block with grass. Let me remind you that without it, no passive mobs will ever spawn for us and we will really need them in the future. So under no circumstances should you plant the tree. We'll only be able to do that once we get more dirt. How do we achieve that? It's basically a similar process as with the tree sapling, except this time we have 2 paths to choose from. Either buy 2 pieces of coarse dirt for 1 emerald from the trader, or buy 3 podzol blocks, that is, this block for 3 emeralds. In my case, I went with the second option, simply because that's the offer my villager gave me. Alright Beku, give me that weird dirt. Now just be careful, please. Okay. And we've got it. The first sapling planted. Now all we had to do was wait a little to finally get what we had been striving for since the beginning of our adventure. And finally we've got wood. With this block of wood, we've just opened the door to the future. We could finally craft our first tools and also expand our area, which led to more mobs spawning. Oh my gosh, viewers, do you see this? As you have probably noticed for yourselves by now, even though we no longer had any major issues with the low spawn rate of monsters, it still wasn't easy at all, homikab. This was mainly because the mobs only had a very tiny, restricted patch of land where they could actually spawn. Because of this, when it finally happened, it would occur in huge numbers. Unfortunately, I had no other choice, so I just had to deal with the situation somehow. Little by little, I kept expanding my island, constantly gathering wood, which I used to enlarge the area. And I kept killing. I hunted monsters for some good item drops. The main goal was to collect 11 iron ingots, which I needed to craft a few useful items. The most important of these was a cauldron, which after some time could fill up with water during rainy weather in Minecraft. Thanks to this, after a dozen or so minutes, we were finally able to create an infinite water source. We had really come a long way by now. At this point, I could breed animals, grow carrots or potatoes, gather virtually any amount of wood, and even build my first decent house. And yet, despite all of this, I still couldn't obtain it, diamond armor, or reach that point where I simply couldn't go any further. As usual, just like before, we have more than one way to take the next breakthrough step, and that is to gain access to an unlimited number of villagers with different types of trades. How do we achieve this? First of all, we need to do something that will allow us to have 2 villagers, because only then can we breed them endlessly. This brings us to the final phase of the game on a single block of dirt. But how do we even get a single villager? In Minecraft, during the night, there is a small chance for a zombie villager to appear. To cure him, we need to throw a splash potion of weakness at him and then give him a golden apple. We have to follow exactly the same procedure ourselves, although we will immediately encounter a few problems along the way. The thing is, we don't have a potion of weakness or a golden apple. It turns out that we can't obtain the first one at all. Nevertheless, there is, however, a certain difficult method that will solve this problem for us. But before I show it to you, let's move on to the golden apple. In this case, we have to use a certain mechanic of Minecraft. Namely, during a thunderstorm, if lightning strikes a pig, it turns into a pigman, and when you kill it, it drops a gold nugget. With this method, we can obtain 8 gold ingots, which are needed to craft a golden apple. But now let's get back to the weakness potion. As I said, there's no way to obtain it. Nevertheless, we can make it so that a zombie villager gets the weakness effect. For this, we need a witch who, as you know, attacks by throwing various potions at us. Of course, all of this is precisely conditioned, when and which potion she throws, but we won't go into the details. What matters is that when we have a witch and a zombie villager in roughly the same place, there is a possibility. There's a chance that the thrown potion with the weakness effect will hit the zombie villager instead of us. And basically, that's the whole process of obtaining villagers, which unfortunately I had to repeat. Finally, after such a long time, we can buy all the diamond tools. This is a huge achievement, considering the fact that we managed to do this starting from just a single block of dirt. Nevertheless, I feel guilty towards you that I still haven't explained everything in detail. Among other things, how on earth I managed to get so many emeralds. To understand this, we need to go back a bit in time. It all started with the act of curing both villagers, which I actually did twice. That was more than enough for my needs, because with just 2 villagers, I could start breeding them almost endlessly. All of this resulted in me finally being able to assign each of them their own specific professions. Even so, some of those stations were quite difficult and problematic to make. For example, to craft a cartography table, I had to get 2 pieces of paper, which basically meant waiting for a wandering trader to spawn who just happened to sell sugarcane. It's also worth noting that some professions are completely impossible to create. It turns out that, for example, we can't craft a brewing stand because we are unable to obtain blaze rods. Fortunately, to get all the powerful diamond tools, we only need a villager with the toolsmith profession. It's also a very good idea to get a Fletcher villager with whom you can easily trade sticks for emeralds. So you can level up your villager as quickly as possible and gain full access to trading for those diamond tools. I've basically shown you the entire progression process on a single block, dirt. Of course we can go much further. We're even able to get diamond armor from monsters, build simple mechanisms, or even create an aquarium. Nevertheless, there are a few things that are impossible. We'll never actually be able to obtain a bucket of lava, or obsidian itself to enter the nether. We're also able to build something as simple as a cobblestone generator. However, who knows, maybe that will change in the future.